People who have worked the drive-thru. What's the weirdest thing you've seen in someone's car? I worked at a Tim Hortons and once saw an old lady with like 50 cartons of eggs in her car. I made a joke saying, looks like you could make your own breakfast. And she got real straight-faced and said, "Oh, honey, those aren't eggs." Still have zero clue what else you could store in an egg carton. Story 2. Had a drunk guy come through a drive-thru. A cop car was in line right behind him. Told the cops about the drunk guy. He was blitzed and was absolutely going to hurt someone. Cops said they knew as they were planning on pulling him over before he turned into the drive-thru and went through. They decided they were hungry and wanted to get food too before pulling him over. They stayed at the back window and had us give them their food first so they could follow him out. Pulled him over in the parking lot. Was kind of entertaining. Story 3. Had a guy consistently come through the drive-thru with his dong out and showing the young girls running the windows. He would always order the same thing. Large mellow yellow, no ice, always on a Sunday, and always wearing military fatigues. Then he stopped showing up for a bit. We called him Private Peters, as our little sign to call the cops if he showed up again. A month later, we get an order for a large mellow yellow, no ice. So I decide to take over the window, because we had a 16-year-old running cash, and sure enough, he hands me his money with his dong in his other hand. We convinced the car in front of him to stay in the lane and we called the cops. He got suspicious and left, but they caught him and was charged. Well, that's disgusting. What a gross human being. Glad he was caught at least. That man is definitely on the registry now, which is probably for the best. Story 14. I was working a McDonald's drive-thru in a small town in Michigan. This truck goes through, pays, and pulls forward to get its meal. Then a chicken jumps out of the back. I yell for the next car in line to stop, but she looks confused and ends up running over the chicken. It's not dead, but it's a wreck. She looks at me and we're both in tears. She says she has to, and I say no. She puts it in reverse and backs over the chicken again. Another employee had to get a shovel and scoop up the dead chicken from the drive-thru. I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of hard getting through the she says she has to, and I say no without laughing, because something about that scene in my head is just really funny. I know it's kind of tragic, but at the same time, not? I don't know. Maybe I'm too calloused. Story 5. One time I was with my mom when she went through the drive-thru. A car stalled at the window and wouldn't start. I looked at her and said, "So, wait for the food and then push?" She said yes. They came to the window with our order and we got everything situated. Then I hopped out and started pushing the car. It was like a big boat of an Oldsmobile, so I had to push it in a way that made it look like I was sitting on the back bumper. The looks on the faces of the people in the window as I passed were pretty damn funny. We ended up going inside the restaurant to wait for someone to pick us up. Someone who was working the drive-thru told us that we could wait there as long as we needed to, and they'd be happy to get us cups for the soda fountain. They checked on us more than once, and we were only there for maybe half an hour. I grew up in a family that often didn't have a vehicle, and when we did have one, it usually left us stranded on a regular basis. This was just a frustrating inconvenience, and the folks working in the restaurant were so nice and felt so bad for us. We were just happy to have a ride on the way and a building to wait in. Ooh, OP didn't say where they went, but they get big hospitality points from me. That is a good way to get people coming back to your restaurant for sure. Story 6. There was this woman that would come through and get a hot chocolate every day. Her name was Mary. Mary was an older gal in her 70s, drove an early 90s Lincoln, usually had some old tunes playing, and weighed 60 pounds, if that. She was always so happy and so nice. I always gave her drinks for free because it was such a treat to see her, and she was just really so nice. One other feature I remember is she always rocked suspenders and a random colored fedora every day. I think she reminded me of Miss Frizzle after she retires. One day she comes through and orders her usual. I said, "Mary, why are you always in such a good mood? What's your secret?" She smiles and waves me closer. I lean out the drive-thru window and she says, "Really, really good drugs." She winks at me, turns her radio up, and cruises out of the parking lot. Mary is my hero. Story 7. So we have two really crazy drive-thru stories. My family owns a franchise of a fast food chain. My brother is taking the drive-thru order. Lots of muffled talking as though it's a group of people trying to decide what to order, along with some shushing. Not unusual. Car pulls around to the window from the speaker. The trunk pops open and a guy jumps out and begins running like hell away. 4 guys in the car jump out after him, tackle him in the street, throw him back in the trunk, and speed off. The other one wasn't so much what was in the car, but I was working drive-thru while a very large local parade that goes down the street in front of the restaurant was happening. Towards the end of the parade, a nice convertible comes crashing through the parking lot, taking out signs and the drive-thru menu board. Turns out they had stolen the donated car from the parade route and took it for a joyride through the parking lot, I guess. I feel like we're missing a big part of the story for the first one. Why did no one try to stop them from leaving? Was the person, being kidnapped or something? I guess that's the only option, right? And then what happened afterwards? Did anyone call the cops? There's so much tension. OP's gotta resolve their stories better. Story 8. I was 17 in high school, was a shift supervisor, and it was a Sunday, with 3 people called out, so we were slammed. I was cleaning trays, washing dishes, and taking orders in the back at the same time, non-stop for 3 hours. My manager comes back and says he needs me to push a van that had broken down at the window. What kind of person takes such crappy care of their van, I thought. I start walking to the front door and look out the drive-thru window. There is a young lady in full habit attire with 5 very elderly women also in full habit attire. I had never seen a nun in person before or since. They look at me and smile. Sorry about this. Without missing a beat, no problem ladies, we'll take care of it. So me and one other guy push it out of the way and help the tow truck guy when he came. The nuns thanked us, blessed us, and rode off. I look at my coworker. So, did you swear when you heard their car broke down? Yup. Me too. We're going to hell. Yup. Story 9. Worked part-time in a KFC just after I left school. I quit 2 months later, though. Anyway, I'm the one handing out the food, and as he's grabbing it, I noticed something quite weird on the passenger seat. When he turned away to put the drinks down before I gave him the food, I had a quick look and saw a tied-up rope. A bit weird, but okay. And then turned with his back to me, and I look around the whole car this time. And in the back seat, behind the passenger seat, is what looked to be hair. At first, I thought it was dog fur, but it wasn't all that thick. It was very thin, blonde hair. I didn't really get a good glimpse before he turned back around. I didn't want him to see me inspecting his car, and he said goodbye to me and drove away. I hope what I saw in the back was just a misunderstanding, but this did give me the creeps for the next 2 months, and I was constantly checking the news to see if any updates about it came out. Funny thing is, though, the guy behind him came up to the window and asked me if I was looking into his car, and I admitted to it. But let's just all hope that what I saw wasn't what we're all thinking right now. Story 10. Used to work at a McDonald's back in the day. I was training a new girl and told her to hand the man at the window his drink. The window opens and I notice the adult man driving is wearing a bib. Weird, but to each their own. As the new girl reaches out her hand to pass the man his drink, he just starts vomiting on himself. Violently. So there was splatter. The new girl stood there in shock, so I grabbed her and pulled her back. The window automatically closed and the man eventually drove away. Another weird instance is when I was handing a man a small chocolate shake. And I kid you not, a small monkey wearing a diaper hopped up onto the man's seat and reached out and took the shake from me. Worst part is, none of my coworkers believed me because I was the only one who saw the monkey. Oh, I just know that I would be frustrated to no end if that happened to me and no one believed me. Because, let's be fair, it's true. If someone told me that at a drive-thru, I'd be like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever. But I wouldn't really believe them. But if it actually happened to me and that's the response I was getting, I would be freaking out. Story 11. This one haunts me to this day. Basically, this couple with their 3 kids in the backseat being over the top, overtly frisky with one another, making out and pawing at each other and giggling. And at one point, the dude poured water on his wife's chest. Big girl in a white wife-beater tank. No body shaming here, but I certainly just didn't want to see it. They kept looking over at me and my coworker to see if we were watching them. We just didn't give them any attention beyond taking their money and handing them food. And by the time they left, they seemed a little annoyed that we weren't engaging with their weirdness. It was just super gross and I felt really awful for the kids. That couple forgot the first rule about anything intimate. Everyone involved should be saying yes. That includes anyone who's watching, which is also why I'm of the opinion that anything public as a frisky kind of thing that people like is just kind of wrong in my opinion. These people did not ask to be included in your fantasy. That's just weird. Story 12. My first work for someone else job was in high school at a burger place with a redheaded namesake. I'm a people person and could count change. So onto the register I go. Late night on a Saturday in 1980-something. Really loud, happy group at the drive-thru. Made their order clearly, but boisterous and a bit over the top loud. No problem, we get the order together. At the window, he rolls the window down and it's him, his buddies, and a keg of beer leaning from the back seat onto a board, with the tap in the middle of the driver's seat bench. He paid, got most of his food, and asked for an extra cup with a lid. We were supposed to charge for it, but He fills the cup from the keg, puts the lid on, pops the straw, and hands a full beer back through the window. I look at my coworkers and no one has seen any of this. Dump my shift soda in the trash and put the beer-filled cup in its place. Pounded that beer in about 45 seconds through a straw. Guess who shows back up at the window? In a quiet voice, he said we forgot something on his order. I had to lean out and he asked if I needed him to get rid of the evidence. "Ah, sorry, sir. Here's your beverage." And out goes the proof of my stupid choice. That is a surprising level of forethought. Going back through the window and being like, you forgot something, but also going back through the window and being like, you guys forgot something. I think it was a drink. And then you just hand them back the beer cup. That's nuts. While I don't necessarily approve of drinking on the job, it was, one beer? It was one beer in a drive-thru position. Like, fine. No one's getting hurt because of this. Story 13. Buckle up, y'all. Naked people. A backseat full of rabbits. 8 teenagers packed into a sedan. A couple who had just banged in our parking lot and then jumped into the drive-thru. A couple birds. A half-dozen teenagers in varying states of sobriety, 2 on bikes, the rest on foot. A Vespa driving Uber Eats driver. Multiple people open carrying and driving. More naked people. At least 30 different breeds of dogs. A half-dozen breeds of cats. A customer once gave me his cat through the drive-thru window while he fished out his wallet. A guy towing a very beat-up vintage car on a flatbed. A lady walking through with a newborn in a stroller against bylaws. She was upset when we turned her away. Multiple adults walking through with young children on bikes/trikes. In my hometown, it's super commonplace for people to ride their horse through, or take the horse and buggies through downtown. I think there's been a couple of tractors too. Almost called the ambulance for a guy we thought was in the middle of a medical crisis. Turns out he had fallen asleep behind the wheel. A lady ordered, "As many large waters as you can give me in one transaction. Please, I'm begging you." Her apartment had inexplicably turned off the water in the middle of a heat wave. A girl ordered, "A cup of daddy's nut and a junior chicken, but instead of mayo, more of daddy's nut." This is just what I can remember off the top of my head. I'll add more if I remember. Gotta say, when it comes to these posts, I do appreciate a big list of short things. I feel like a lot of the stories can get pretty rambly. The last one, though, that's something for sure. Also something that I said out loud, huh? That is a voice clip that is now out there forever. So, enjoy. Story 14. Once while working at Taco Bell around 1 a.m. in a small country town, a beat-up pickup truck came through. Now, his order wasn't strange, but his teeth were horrible. He ordered something we didn't have ready yet, and after I gave him his change, he struck up a conversation with me. That was normal enough until I told him his food was almost done. That was when he leaned in real close to the window, gestured for me to come forward, and whispered in my ear, "Do you have any drugs on you? I have cash." I pulled away and handed him his bag, and as the truck passed, there was a whole alligator chilling in the back of his truck. Like, what, man? If this wasn't in Florida, I will be astonished. I'm not even an American, and I know that this is a Florida vibe. Story 15. One Direction. They came through after doing a show in Belfast. We were the only McDonald's open at that time of night at the time. One of them, don't ask me their name, I don't care, stuck his head through the seats from the back and said, "Mate, please don't tell anyone we're here. We just want to eat and leave." My response was, "Yeah, no problem. Who are you?" He sheepishly put his head back where it belonged. I found out who they were when one of the girls on shift started running around the place telling anyone who would listen that she had just given food to whoever, and waving around a receipt that they had signed for her. Gotta be honest, I don't know what the One Direction guys sound like. I just did my best. I'm pretty sure they're like British, vaguely accents. I don't know. I am not an expert. Story 16. So this is definitely not me. One time I was super high in the back of my friend's car and they made me order because I was the only one that wanted food. Bad idea. So when I got to the window, the girl thought I looked cute and said I looked like Andrew Garfield. I was the only one in the car who knew who that was, so I looked him up to show everyone. And right when I did, she came back to the window and said, "Oh, you're looking him up." And my elegant, high self snapped back, "No." And she just smiled and said, "It's all right if you were." But my ego was too hurt at that point, and I just wanted my food. So I glared at her and told my friend to drive, even though she was cute and I was completely oblivious to the fact that she was flirting. Poor girl. They all laugh at me to this day. Just a tip for all the guys out there. If a girl ever tells you look like Andrew Garfield, that's probably flirting. Story 17. I have a story from the other side as the person going through the drive-thru. When I was in college, my girlfriend had guinea pigs, and one of them had babies. She asked me if I could take a few of them, so I did. Our college was only an hour drive from my parents' place, and I had a bunch of friends back home that I liked to see on the weekend, so I went home frequently on the weekends. I would always take the guinea pigs with me, of course, since nobody would be around to take care of them. So I just put their cage in the back seat, didn't think much of it. Well, every time I would go home, I would also stop by the same Starbucks on the way. It was always roughly the same time on a Friday, so the same dude was always at the drive-thru. After a few months, he finally asked, "So, Do you just drive around with those guinea pigs all the time? What's the deal? Dude thought I just always took them wherever I went. Story 18. I don't work at a drive-thru, but I have to add this. Back in 1986, I was hanging out at a McDonald's parking lot with my boyfriend and brother. We had all been drinking a little. I happened to see 2 large tour buses come through around the store and park in the back. I then saw a lot of men come out of them and walk toward the store. All of a sudden, I yelled, "Hey, that's Jimmy Carter." I wish you knew my boyfriend to understand how he was when he yelled, "How about you, Jimmy?" Jimmy smiled at him and waved. He and his wife and the Secret Service men went into the store to the bathroom. A few of the men stood around the door. Soon after that, my boyfriend saw someone he knew waiting in the drive-thru. He ran over to him and yelled, "Hey, Jimmy Carter's in there taking a pee." He said it so loud everybody in the store heard him. Then I saw everyone in the store run toward the bathroom. I don't remember what happened after that. I can't imagine the security detail with him were very happy about that. All of a sudden, the entire store knows and is crowding around it. That must be a headache when all he had to do was take a leak. Story 19. Banging. Our drive-thru faced west. This will be important later. We also shared a parking lot with a wing place. There was a van parked in the parking lot to the wing place, and this couple were just going at it inside of it. The windows were tinted, but because it was sunset, the sun was shining through the windows, so we could see the silhouette of them testing the van's suspension. I called all of my coworkers over and we gave them a round of applause when they finished and got out of the van to hop back into the front seats. The man looked proud of himself and the woman looked embarrassed. Story 20. Obligatory not a drive-thru worker, but I was riding in my friend's car and asked where the garbage was. She had a touch screen in her car, not a Tesla, but I forgot what type it is. And she grabbed it and turned it around. There was a small trash can on the back of the screen. It turns out her dad was an engineer and had customized it for their car. It may not seem that cool compared to other people's, but I thought it was amazing. Story 21. I've got a couple, so I'm just gonna go down the line. Grossest thing? A massive fake dong that looked very shiny, as well as a video camera and a very sweaty woman driving the car. Scariest thing? A literal minigun in the back of a car. Weirdest thing? The entire car was covered in cat food. It was piled everywhere. The floor, the seats, and it looked like the trunk had so much cat food in it, it was overflowing the edge of the back seats. Favorite thing? I guess this could also be gross, but the guy had a naked anime girl body pillow buckled into the shotgun seat. I burst out laughing and the guy got really upset and told me to get my boss. I went to go get my boss and he also laughed at the guy. Look, I'm all for people having their own things, you know? But if you're that last guy, you kinda have to have some self-awareness at the very least, right? That is an amusing sight. I don't know what else you want people to do. Are they just gonna say, "Oh, I love your wife. She's so beautiful and naked and a pillow and anime. That's so cool, man." Anyway, on that note, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I will see you in the next one.